On 11 January 1944, the VIII Air Force flew the third costliest American bomber mission of the war, with the highest losses since the October Schweinfurt mission. Over 650 heavy bombers were dispatched deep into Germany to aircraft manufacturing plants in Oschersleben, Halberstadt, and 3 other cities. This was also the only mission where the Medal of Honor was awarded to a fighter pilot for air combat over Europe. 3 VIII Air Force divisions, in excess of 650 heavy bombers, were assigned bombing missions in Germany. The 1st Division assembled 5 combat wings. The 3rd and 2nd Divisions assembled 7 more wings, with the 3 wings of the 2nd Division B-24s bringing up the rear. The 1st Division crossed the Dutch coast at 10:35 hours. Escort would consist of 2 P-47 groups for the first 2 legs to the target, and a P-51 group over the target, with additional P-47s and Spitfires covering the return. All of the 1st and 3rd Division bombers were B-17s. Due to limitations of the simulator used for this video, B-26s will be substituted for the B-17s. The first 2 combat wings flew the course shown in red, which is from the 401st Bomb Group track report. The other 3 wings chose to fly the prescribed course shown in blue. The first 3 combat wings, the black B-17s, were assigned the Focke-Wulf plant in Oschersleben. The other 2 combat wings, the gray B-17s, were assigned the Junkers plant in Halberstadt. However, not all of the bombers dropped on their primary targets. H-2X Pathfinder bombers would fly in the deputy lead position of each combat wing. There were 15 H-2Xs for 12 combat wings. From 91st Bomb Group historian Lowell Getz. The distance between the 1st combat wing and the other 2 wings, the 41st and the 94th, increased after crossing the Dutch coast. The 40th wing noticed the 94th and 41st were off course and chose to fly the prescribed course. The 1st wing was north of the other 2 off-course wings and lost sight of them. It also followed the brief course and arrived at the IP at 11:38. The lead ship, the 8-Ball, 303rd Bomb Group, 41st Combat Wing, was flown by Lieutenant Colonel Calhoun, with Brigadier General Robert Travis riding along. From Brigadier General Travis: solid clouds below, outside temperature minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit, approaching Dutch coast and Zuider Zee. Ahead of me I can see many pursuit aircraft, and though they are too far for me to identify through my field glasses, I believe them to be friendly. The navigator informed us that we're just flying over a fringe of land on the Dutch coast. Almost immediately I saw 5 Me-109s diving toward us out of the sun. We had little to worry about with this first attack, as our friendly fighters had also observed them and were right on their tails, giving them so much difficulty that they were never able to press home their attacks. Our entire friendly cover was drawn off behind these 5 aircraft, and almost immediately engaged by another large force of enemy fighters from the south. That was the last I saw of any effective fighter support. 5 minutes later I could see large numbers of small black objects rising on both sides of the formation and flying parallel to our course. It was not necessary for them to get close enough for positive identification. I knew them to be Huns, as they soon proved. From this time on, action became so violent and combat so exciting that it is difficult to tell a cohesive story. The enemy aircraft continued to climb and pull ahead of us until there were 2 columns of pursuit ships of approximately 25 each, strung out just outside of machine gun range. Drawing ahead of us 4 or 5 miles, the ends of the columns turned in 90 degrees across our course, peeled off in elements of 5, which flew in abreast, wingtip to wingtip, head-on to our formation. Successive waves of fighters being so close that when our gunners fired at the first wave, the next 2 waves would get through unmolested. From the Journal of Vern Moncur, 359th Bomb Squadron, 303rd Bomb Group, who flew the number 6 bomber in the lead formation. The first pass made of our group included 30 to 35 Me-109s and FW-190s. The low group, to our left, had 3 forts go down from this first pass. We also saw 3 German fighters shot down by this group during this time. Back to General Travis. Every gun in the formation was firing continuously. As the waves of fighters would dive toward me, my eyes would be fastened to the leading edge of their wings, waiting for the first burst of 20mm fire. Suddenly, the entire wing would burst into flame as all of their guns bore upon us. Back to Bernmond Kerr in the number 6 bomber. The number 4 ship, lead ship of our element and on whose wing we were flying formation, had its number 1 engine hit. It immediately burst into flames and dropped out of formation. A few minutes later, this plane exploded. Soon afterward, the number 3 ship ahead of us also caught on fire in the number 1 engine and peeled out of formation. This ship exploded also. Lieutenant Purcell was the pilot, and he and his crew didn't have a chance. I then moved my ship up into the number 3 position, flying on the left wing of the wing leader, General Travis. Several fierce attacks were made on our squadron. The other groups were getting worked over by the Krauts also. We were all really catching hell. We made several evasive maneuvers to get away from the fighters during this time. From General Travis. 20mm would leave a chain of white donuts hanging suspended in the air, and within a matter of split seconds after the firing had started, the pursuit ships would be to and through the formation. These first attacks were made with no effort whatsoever at evasion. They flew into the B-17 formation, firing as they came. Diving toward me now was another formation of Focke-Wulfs. One of these seemed determined on knocking us out by collision. Cal rolled our aircraft to the left in almost a vertical bank, and the FW shimmed over our wing, missing us by so little that the distance was impossible to estimate. My top turret gunner, without thinking, yelled over the interphone, "That was too goddamn close." Fighter support. 48 P-47s of the 356th Fighter Group escorted from 1035 to 1100 hours. Their endurance ended in the Lingon area. Then 30 P-47s of the 56A Group arrived as the 356 was leaving, and became engaged with 50 to 100 single-engine aircraft. The escort continued to Minden at 11:30. Lieutenant Colonel Dave Schilling was leading 37 P-47s of the 56A Group on the second leg of escort, and appears to have covered the 3 wings on the prescribed route. Schilling was credited with shooting down a fighter during this escort. Zemke was back in the United States from October 1943 until after this mission on 19 January. First Lieutenant Glenn Schiltz of the 63rd Fighter Squadron was also on this mission and was credited with shooting down 3 enemy aircraft. Victories number 6 through 8 for him. U.S. Air Force Study 85 shows Schilling's A Group claimed a total of 8 aircraft shot down this day. Gabreski would later lead the other half of the 56th Fighter Group, 36 P-47s, to support the 3rd Division Bomber Egress. They were present when most of the 3rd Division turned around at Lingon. It was 10:10 undercast clouds, but that began to improve around the Dutch-German border. The 306th Bomb Group lost 5 B-17s and an H-2X near Doomer Lake. Of the bombers targeting Oschersleben, 174 B-17s and 3 H-2X Pathfinders were left after Osnabrück. From General Travis in his letter, we were now within 10 or 15 minutes of our IP, where we would turn on course toward the target. The radio operator contacted me by interphone and told me that the division had scrubbed the mission for many of the combat wings due to weather conditions at their targets. Though we had received no instructions, I was left with the decision as to whether to proceed on to the target or return to our bases with the main force. I fully realized that should I proceed, I would become the sole target of all that remained of the Luftwaffe, and their undivided attention would almost certainly wipe out what was left of my force. Visibility was excellent, and it appeared that the target would be visual. I felt that our losses had been so great that success of the main mission must be accomplished. I informed the combat wing and my crew that we would continue and attack as briefed. At this point, some definitions might help. Star Stud was the call sign for the 356 Fighter Squadron. Escort flights were organized as red, leading, followed by white, blue, and green. Flossmoor is a call sign for the group leader, Jim Howard in this case. Goldsmith 1-2 is the bomber's call sign. TAC line is ground control. Fighter pilot combat encounter times are approximations that were often rounded to the nearest 5-minute mark and are less accurate than times in bomber reports. Fighter pilots referred to bomber combat wings as boxes. Fighter pilot references to the target always seem to be referring to Halberstadt, even though all of the lead bomber wings being escorted were targeting Oschersleben. For the 354th group, the top squadron was the 353rd, the middle squadron was the 355th, and the lead squadron was the 356th. The IP is the initial point from which the bomb run would begin. Jim Howard was leading 49, now reduced to 44, Mustangs of the 354th Fighter Group with red flight of the 356th Squadron. Major Howard was the 30-year-old CO of the 356 Squadron and alternated group leads with Group CO Colonel Ken Martin. From Jim Howard's commander's report, the twin targets of Halberstadt and Oschersleben were the objectives of the bombers that the 354th Fighter Group was assigned to give general target area support as the 14th combat mission of the unit. 49 P-51s took off from home base and steered a direct course to the rendezvous point. The group climbed through an overcast at 4,000 feet and continued up to 25,000 feet. At this altitude, from the point of landfall to about 100 miles in the enemy coast, cloud mists were present and made visibility alternately bad. We rendezvoused with the rear two boxes of bombers at 11:15, 15 minutes ahead of schedule. But a message was received from TAC line informing us that the bombers were on time, so it was understood that there were boxes ahead. From this first point of rendezvous to the target, the overcast was broken. Over the target and on the withdrawal route, it was clear, with heavy snow blanketing the ground, which made visibility excellent. No supporting fighters were seen, so the top squadron was sent to cover these boxes. From author William Hess, Jack Bradley of the 353rd Squadron wrote, "We rendezvoused with the bombers at 11:15 at 23,000 feet at Minden. The group leader dispatched our squadron to cover the last three boxes into the target area. It was uneventful until 11:45. Back to Howard's commander's report. 5 minutes later, another large box was contacted and the middle squadron was sent to cover it. Shortly after this, Goldsmith 1-2 was contacted over Sea Channel, which announced that they, meaning the 41st Wing, were being attacked by bandits at a position short of the target. The lead squadron proceeded and rendezvoused with the lead boxes at 11:33, just short of the target. And the flights were distributed in protective formations. Enemy aircraft opposition was encountered on these lead bombers from the point of rendezvous until 12:30 when we had to leave. Attacks were directed at bombers usually from below or from the sides, and some from head-on. Enemy aircraft did not have any definite formations, but seemed to float around individually. From the 401st Mission Report, the 401st Bomb Group of the 94th Wing was attacked by rocket-firing Me-110s between the IP point and the target. One bomber in the high box was hit by a rocket. and 2 other bombers collided with it. All 3 were lost. Bombers were also lost in the low box around this time. From Dick Turner's combat report. 11:45, I was leading Starstead Green Flight with Lieutenant O'Connor flying extra as number 5. We were dispatched with Blue Flight to cover a bomber box south of the target. We flew top cover as Blue went down, but caught enemy aircraft lining up on the bombers. Switching to Max Lamb's report. South of Halberstadt, I was Starstud Green Leader, number 3 man. Starstud Green Flight saw Me-110 south of the target area and attacked from above and astern. Lieutenant Turner jumped the 110 and it broke towards me. I dropped in behind it, line astern, and fired from 200 yards to point-blank range. 3 of my guns stopped firing after a short burst, but I kept firing with my 1 remaining gun, the right outboard, and observed strikes on the Me-110's wings and horizontal stabilizer. I closed fast as he went into a vertical dive and had to brake. Three of my wingmen, Lieutenant Tyner, Lieutenant Turner, and Lieutenant O'Connor respectively, fired on it as the Me-110 went down. Lieutenant Turner followed it down and saw it fall apart. It was claimed as destroyed by Lamb. Lieutenant Frank O'Connor was flying top cover for Dick Turner and vice versa. In Dick's autobiography, he claims he lost sight of O'Connor, and O'Connor radioed him he was in a turning fight with 2 109s. Turner searched the sky frantically but couldn't find O'Connor and then got the message, "Never mind, Dick, I finally caught them and shot one of them down." Actually, O'Connor never claimed a 109. From O'Connor's combat report, 11:49, 3 miles west of the target, Halberstadt. After shooting down an Me-110 in the target area, I zoom climbed back up and was joined by Lieutenant Turner, and we climbed toward the bombers. I was attacked by another Me-110 from ahead and to the left. Lieutenant Turner engaged another, and we separated. I pulled up as he went under me and circled right to get on his tail. As I closed in, I observed strikes on both wings and the fuselage. Black smoke was coming off the fuselage. I closed to about 75 yards and he rolled on his back and went straight down. I claim this aircraft probably destroyed. I was then at about 7,000 feet and pulled up and to the left and discovered 2 Me-109s on my tail, so didn't have time to see what happened to the Me-110. I outturned the 109s and got on their tail. I fired 1 short burst at the wingman, but was way out of range and so did not continue the attack, as it would have led me farther into Germany. From Robert Brooks' combat report. 11:55, northwest of Halberstadt. I was Starstead Red 3, flying second element in Flossmoor or Starstead Red flight. We were covering the lead box of bombers, and just after this box passed over the target, Halberstadt, Flossmoor went in on an Me-110 attacking the bombers from behind and at about the same level. I observed Flossmoor getting strikes on the enemy aircraft and saw his left engine burning. Red 2 and 4 both gave the enemy aircraft short bursts, but were apparently not getting any strikes. After breaking away from the Me-110, I was looking for Flossmoor. I was climbing up with Red 4 and he broke right to avoid another Me-110 coming in on his aircraft from the rear. I was in such a position after the break to get a shot in from astern with only about 10 to 15 degrees deflection. I closed to about 250 to 300 yards and gave short bursts into the enemy aircraft. Flame began to trail from the left engine. and the plane started a slow dive toward the ground. I tried to follow though, but could not pull my aircraft through to get any further shots. The last I saw before braking to rejoin Red 4 was the Me-110 diving toward the ground. I claim this enemy aircraft as a probably destroyed. From Red 2, Verlin Chambers, 1205 northwest of Halberstadt. I followed Flossmoor 1 down on a Me-110 and fired a short burst after he pulled up. I observed no hits. I pulled up, but was unable to find Flossmoor 1. While circling and looking for him at about 21,000 feet, I observed a Me-109 closing up on a straggling B-17. I dropped in dead astern behind him and closed to approximately 300 yards and began firing. The first burst took off his belly tank. The enemy aircraft continued straight ahead. At about 30 yards, the enemy aircraft was completely obscured by smoke, and my windscreen was covered with oil. I broke off to avoid a collision. I was unable to see what happened to this Me-109. However, Lieutenant Brooks submitted a statement that the enemy aircraft was destroyed. From Brooks, Red 3. The friendly P-51, Star-Stud Red 2, joined up with Red 4 and I shortly later, and we continued to escort the bombers on the trip back out. G. William Potter of the 91st Bomb Group, 1st Wing, was a navigator. Potter's B-17 was shot down after completing the bomb run, and he survived as a POW. He spent 4 or 5 years combing through mission reports to piece together what happened. From Potter. Another mishap occurred when the lead wing, the 41st, reached the IP point and saw the 1st combat wing coming towards them. To avoid a collision, the 2 wings that were south of the planned course made an S-turn, which resulted in the combat wing that had been in 3rd place moving to 1st place. The first 2 wings moved to the 2nd and 3rd places. The 1st wing's bombs landed short of the target and hit the city. The 41st and 94th wings bombed after the 1st wing with better accuracy. From the 401st Bomb Group Mission Report, bombing was by groups. The lead box bombed 30 degrees off the brief course. The low box was forced out on the S-turn and bombed a town northwest of the primary. The high box bombed the primary after the lead box. Bombing results were good. The high box carried incendiaries, and the lead and low boxes carried 500-pound GPs. Rally with the high box was normal after the turn from the target. The turn was made to avoid flak from Magdeburg. The low box, after bombing a target of opportunity, joined another wing. The 94th Wing continued on the brief course home, in 3rd position in the division. The composite low box from the 5th place 40th B Combat Wing was unable to bomb Halberstadt due to other bombers in the way, so they bombed their alternate target, Oschersleben. From historian Lowell Getz, 2 bomb groups of the 3rd Division went on to bomb Brunswick, but the remainder turned back around Osnabrück. Most of the P-47s detailed for the withdrawal aborted or returned early. A 2nd and 3rd Division track chart noted the recall at 11:45. Steve Blake's book provides combat reports. From Jim Howard, 11:55. My flight had lost me in this melee. At 18,000 feet, I met an FW-190, which I climbed up into almost directly astern. I gave it a 3-second burst at about 450 yards range. Pieces flew off, then the canopy came off, and the pilot bailed out. It is possible that the camera film of my plane may show little, for the pilot may have bailed out in anticipation of something worse to come, rather than due to actual serious damage. Claimed as destroyed. (1200). Looking around for P-51s to join up on, I noticed a P-51 trying to join up on an Me-109. As I came in behind, the 51 broke away. the Me-109 chopped his throttle and tried to out-scissors me below for a rear shot. Being unsuccessful, he broke to the left and tried a turning fight. I dropped 20 degrees of flaps and closed in on him, whereupon he dove out. I followed him a short ways and gave a short burst, noting strikes. Claimed as damaged. From historian Lowell Getz, the 303rd Bomb Group and 91st Bomb Group had no further losses after the target. From authors William Hess and Thomas Ivey. Technical Sergeant Bart Hagen of the 351st Bomb Group stated, "In the heat of the air battle, our right waist gunner yelled over the interphone, 'There's a P-51 coming under our belly at 9 o'clock. Don't shoot at him.'" From the ball turret of Charlie Crane came back, "Look at that crazy. He's attacking them all alone. There must be 50 of them." This then unknown fighter pilot proceeded to fly circles around the Germans and broke up the attack on our element. From General Travis's letter, "Turning from the IP toward the target, we observed one lone P-51 diving into the midst of our attacking enemy and fight with glorious disregard to his own safety, with determination to break up their murderous attacks upon us. As he rolled and dove through the formation with all his guns blazing, we saw him shoot down successively 5 enemy fighters, and though we could never hear our encouragements, cheers went up from every American in formation." It's interesting some bomber crews apparently didn't notice the P-51 escorts, and the story of a lone P-51 took hold. Some 401st and 351st bomber crews reported fake dogfights between twin-engine aircraft and Me-109s. P-51Bs were new to the crews, and apparently some mistook them for 109s. From Jim Howard's combat report, 12:10. I climbed above bomber level and came down on Me-110 off to the starboard. I closed in, giving several bursts and noted strikes all over the plane. Black smoke came out, and the plane rolled on its back and remained there with gasoline, white and black smoke coming out. I last saw the plane in a vertical dive. Claimed as probably destroyed, but in a rare event, later confirmed as destroyed. Jim Howard's combat report states he attacked a 109 above the bombers with only one gun working, and claims he probably destroyed it. Without working machine guns, he continued to dive on enemy aircraft, bluffing his attacks. Returning to General Travis, out of ammunition and nearly out of gas, this lone fighter finally had to leave us and return to his base with our prayers and hopes for his safety. He made it, and later each of us had the opportunity to extend our personal thanks for his brave assistance. Jim Howard said that although bomber crews reported attacks by a group of 30 German aircraft over the target, he never saw that many and only encountered single aircraft. In his commander's report, he noted that 27 of the 39 claims the group made were for twin-engine aircraft. Enemy activity was generally below or off to the side of the bombers. Combat was just below supercharger cut-in altitude, which was a disadvantage. It was proven in several turning fights that the new P-51Bs can outturn the Me-109 and FW-190. It was also found that in a majority of cases, 2 or 3 of the 4 slant-mounted guns would jam after a few bursts, and pilots then chose to avoid combat. Howard complained again about the great separation distance between leading and rear bomber, quote, boxes, unquote, and how that made it difficult to assign escort coverage efficiently. When the P-51s left the bombers, no friendly fighters were present to relieve them, although Howard reported on our return, P-47s were noticed going in overhead. Bomber losses and fighter claims. The 1st Division lost 41 B-17s. The 8th Air Force settled on a bomber loss estimate of 60 bombers and 5 fighters, 4 P-47s and a P-38, with 5 more bombers scrapped in England. All 5 fighter pilots were killed in action. 2 P-47s crashed on landing, killing both pilots. Here are the victory credits per U.S. Air Force Study 85. It can be seen that the 353rd and 355th Squadrons Howard assigned escort tasks to also encountered enemy fighters, claiming 7 destroyed. So Howard did a pretty good job distributing his squadrons. Howard's 356th Squadron claimed 11. Overall, the 8th Air Force's fighters were credited with 32 destroyed. The bomber gunners claimed hundreds of German fighters shot down that day, but that was later reduced to 10% of the original estimate. From author Donald Caldwell, the Luftwaffe lost 53 aircraft destroyed and 31 damaged beyond economical repair. The mission report from the 356th Fighter Squadron shows Jim Howard didn't fly his assigned aircraft, Ding Hao, on his Medal of Honor mission, but instead flew AJX 436441. Squadron records show Jim Howard also flew AJX on the January 4th and 5th missions, while other pilots flew his assigned aircraft, AJA, on those missions. AJX and AJA were both newer P-51 B-5s, while most of the group was flying B-1s. Due to pressure exerted by the U.S. Army Air Force's publicity machine, Howard reluctantly instructed Staff Sergeant Marcus Hansen to repaint the 3 swastikas on his assigned aircraft a week after the mission with 6 rising suns and 6 swastikas. The Japanese victories occurred during Howard's time with the American volunteer group, the Flying Tigers, in China and Burma, where he had 4 ground victories and 2 1/3 in the air. Jim Howard was in the U.S. Navy, flying F-2Fs and F-3Fs, and trained on the F-4F before resigning to join the American volunteer group. In February 1944, Howard took command of another fighter group, but after 354th Group CO Ken Martin went down on a head-on collision and became a POW, Howard returned to the 354th to become Group CO. From William Hess, he stayed as group commander until 17 April 1944, when he was involuntarily reassigned as a staff officer for 9th Fighter Command. He was presented his 2nd DFC at the end of March and the Medal of Honor in June. While Howard's efforts were heroically referred to by some as those of a one-man Air Force, there were many other airmen participating that day. From historian Lowell Getz, total bomber crew losses for the day were killed in action 238, POW 360, evaded or returned dead 7. For its performance on the 11 January 1944 mission, the entire 1st Air Division was awarded a Presidential Distinguished Unit citation. That's it. Thanks for watching.